The people I discuss the WWF with know that it's not a sport.
Right.
It's a masculine ballet.
So he compared dozens of groups he considered cults with so-called cult brands, from Hare Krishna to Harley Davidson.
If you're smart and kind of individual, that's what you drive.
From Falun Gong to Mac.
I think there's something about Mac users, like they get it.
We just had discovered something. They realize there are other people like them and they cooperate on certain projects. And it's part of belonging to the tribe.
And the conclusion was this, is that people, whether they're joining a cult or joining a brand, do so for exactly the same reasons. They need to belong and they want to make meaning. We need to figure out what the world is all about and we need the company of others. It's simply that. Saturn is a really good example. It's a mass cult brand. For example, 45,000 people turned up to spend their holiday, their vacation time at the factory in Tennessee, instead of going to Disney World or the Grand Canyon. Now, why would they do that? It's because they wanted to meet other people who own Saturns. They wanted to meet the rest of the Saturn family. They wanted to meet the people who made the car. The people who made the car wanted to meet them. And the people who ran the Saturn business knew that.
This summer,
They not only knew it, they turned it into an ad, which only brought more people into the Saturn family.
we called it the Saturn Homecoming. They could see where the idea for a new kind of car company had taken shape, and we could thank them for believing we could do it.
And they created a great meaning system for Saturn. In those fantastic commercials, their meaning system was based on old-time values of community. It was a kind of an icon that America yearned for but couldn't find anymore.
And that's the object of emotional branding, to fill the empty places where non-commercial institutions like schools and churches might have once done the job. Brands become more than just a mark of quality. They become an invitation to a longed-for lifestyle, a ready-made identity.
So as long as man has not got a center, as long as he's, divorced from his own center, not aware about how his consciousness is being manipulated, he will remain open to this kind of manipulation. Fantastic comment on this in Lord of the Rings. They didn't bring it out in the movie, except in one very short line, which is hard to miss, but in the book they emphasize it very, very prominently, that when they're approaching the wizard Saruman, who's a character in the story who's basically was a good man turned evil, that the other wizards in the know, or the other elders in the know, continually warn anyone who should approach Saruman to beware his voice.
The white wizard approaches.
To beware his use of language, because that alone will hypnotize you, and no matter how strong you are, you'll be pulled into his web.
Do not let him speak. He will put a spell on us.
I just loved that. I thought that was fantastic, a very powerful image. They did bring it out a little bit in the movie, but this whole idea of the seduction of a man's voice and the power of charisma, and the ability, and of course the media uses this a great deal. And you have, this ties back into the whole concept of the god Mercury. If anyone's familiar with the symbolism of Hermes and Mercury and Thoth, and the earlier version of all of these gods was Ogma from the Celtic tradition, and even Hern being the origin of the word Herm or Hermes. It's all Irish Druidic. Those gods were the gods of language. Those gods were the gods of words. Those gods were the gods of communication, with the understanding that communication by words is a phenomenally powerful and important weapon of both the good and the bad side. Interestingly, Ogma, the Celtic god, his other two traits was strength. They taught symbolically like this. Okay, so Ogma is the god of language, but he's also the god of strength? Yes, because language is strength. Language is a form of power. Man who knows how to manipulate language and words is strong. What was his title, his name? They call him the Honey Mouth. Ogma the Honey Mouth, because, and I guess there's even Scandinavian, I think Loki had the power of that, almost a hypnotic, ability with words.
Art is like magic. The science of manipulating symbols, words or images, to achieve changes in consciousness. The very language of magic seems to be talking as much about writing or art as it is about supernatural events. A grimoire, for example, the Book of Spells, is simply a fancy way of saying grammar. Indeed, to cast a spell is simply to spell, to manipulate words, to change people's consciousness. And I believe that this is why an artist or writer is the closest thing in the contemporary world that you are likely to see to a shaman.
When you hear these talismanic words like control, security, stronger America, strength, realize that they're talismanic words. They're being used against you. They're seduction words to try and get you to accept this because you don't have that. Well, you've been raped of that. The people who are selling you one story here have actually taken away the very things that you needed that were in your psyche to begin with.
I am continuing and I am increasing the search for every possible path to peace.
We maintain our strength in order to deter and defend against aggression, to preserve freedom and peace.
No one, friend or foe, should doubt our desire for peace.
The United States wants peace.
We seek peace. We strive for peace.
I pledged in my campaign for the presidency to end the war in a way that we could win the peace.
I respect your idealism. I share your concern for peace. I want peace as much as you do.
We cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun that could come in the form of a mushroom cloud.
Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Botulinum, VX, sarin, nerve agent.
Iraq and Al-Qaeda.
Iraq and Al-Qaeda.
Terrorism, cyber attacks,
Nuclear program.
biological weapons, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles.
Chemical and biological weapons.
Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
President Bush has said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Tony Blair has said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Donald Rumsfeld has said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Richard Butler has said they do. The United Nations has said they do. The experts have said they do. Iraq says they don't. You can choose who you want to believe.
The sources that have deceived us so constantly don't deserve our trust. And to the